Today we are coming to you from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and we will be looking at Iverson's attack on July 1st, 1863, and Iverson's pits. Currently, I am standing on Oak Hill overlooking Iverson's attack. Iverson's North Carolinians would be coming from the right and marching down that field to the left towards the 11th Pennsylvania. So let's go down there and take a look. Phinn and I will be sitting at the 11th Pennsylvania Monument, overlooking their perspective as the North Carolinians charge them. It is from a book by William Henry Locke, who was with the regiment, called The Story of the Regiment, the 11th Pennsylvania.
The right wing of the army, consisting of the 1st and the 11th Corps under the command of General Reynolds, continued its leisurely movement towards Gettysburg. There was nothing in the clear blue sky of the first morning in July to indicate what the day would bring forth. If anything could suggest peaceful thoughts to armed men, it was the country through which we were passing. So like a paradise it seemed to the forsaken regions south of the Potomac, almost every acre which had been furrowed by battle, or trenched for the burial of dead. With what hearty state pride each one beheld the lofty mountains, the broad plains, the flowering valleys of Pennsylvania. No wonder the Southern soldiers remembered to what he must return, was loath to leave those far fields. While General Reynolds was approaching the town, Hill's corps of the rebels' army was moving in the same direction from Chambersburg, and Early and Ewell's corps from Carlisle and York. Buford's cavalry occupied Gettysburg the last day of June, and on the first of the new month, in reconnaissance out of the Chambersburg pike, encountered Heath's division of the rebel advance. Robinson's division was 3 miles to the rear when the first artillery report broke the stillness of the morning air and rolled away in echoes among the surrounding hills. How that first gun, the invariable prelude to battle, always startles the nerves and sends the heart on a double-quick motion. But as cannon answers to cannon, the nerves become accustomed to the usual sound, and the heart comes back again to its steady beat. It was not known what considerable force of the enemy was in our immediate vicinity, and the party in front of the cavalry was regarded as an advance guard sent forward to watch the movements of the Federal commander. Presently, long lines of infantry began to develop themselves, and Buford sent word that the enemy was in force. Wadsworth's division of the 1st Corps was in advance. Then came Doubleday, and last Robinson. Placing himself at the head of Wadsworth's column, General Reynolds pushed rapidly forward and moving across the fields to the left of the Emmitsburg Road and taking positions on Seminary Ridge, a half-mile west of Gettysburg. There were other eyes than those of General Reynolds that saw the advantages of that commanding ridge. Scarcely had our troops reached the ground when Heath's division, having driven back the cavalry, turned upon Wadsworth and in desperate charges vainly endeavored to drive him from the ridge. In the first volley from the rebel line, General Reynolds fell mortally wounded, dying in the arms of his attendants before he could be removed from the field. The firing of the first gun in front closed up the straggling ranks of the rear division. Aides-de-camp were seen riding along the column, delivering orders to several commanders and urging forward the troops. "Step out, lively men," said one. "General Reynolds has been wounded, and every man is needed at the front." Those were troops not to be disheartened by disaster as they neared the battlefield. A firmer and steadier step struck the ground. Nobly did the 1st Division maintain its lines, inflicting heavy losses upon the rebels, and before its support came up, capturing General Archer and his entire brigade. The death of General Reynolds placed General Doubleday in command of the 1st Corps and General Howard in command of the right wing of the army. Strengthening Wadsworth's line with the 3rd Division, Robinson's division was held in reserve behind Seminary Ridge. While the troops of the 1st Corps were thus disposed, the 11th Corps marched through town and formed on the right. The outlines of the Battle of Gettysburg at this moment began to be seen. Hill was in front of the 1st Corps with 30,000 men, and Ewell was approaching our right flank with 30,000 more. "Tell Doubleday to fight on the left, and I will hold to the right," said General Howard to Buford's adjutant, who rode up to tell him of the advance of Ewell. Robinson was getting into position near the seminary when Doubleday observed a dangerous gap between him and Howard. The 11th Pennsylvania and the 97th New York were at once pushed forward some distance beyond the railroad embankment to occupy the space. A little later, the rest of the 2nd Brigade was sent forward, and at last the whole division. Not a single regiment remained in reserve, and from left to right the line was enveloped in fire and smoke. The enemy was striking its heaviest blows on the left and changing front. Robinson took position on a ridge running parallel with Seminary Ridge, 400 or 500 yards further west. It was now noon, and the battle grew fiercer with every hour. Gallantly, the rebels came against our front, and as gallantly, they were driven back. "We are Pennsylvanians, and we've come here to stay," was the shout that followed every repulse of the enemy. There seemed to be no end to those Southern ranks, as there was no exhausting the persistent courage with which they continued the attack. Quick as one line was swept away, another and stronger line took its place. Baxter had just repulsed one of the enemy's severest assaults when a North Carolina brigade veered round for a charge on our right flank. The 19th Pennsylvania and the 12th Massachusetts met the North Carolinians with a musketry fire that doubled up their ranks and sent them streaming back towards the left in a defenseless confusion. It was our time to charge, and rushing upon those broken ranks with spirit of men who had everything at stake, the 11th Pennsylvania and 97th New York brought back with them 400 prisoners and the flag of the 23rd North Carolina Regiment. The record of 1 hour on that ridge is the record of 3 hours the troops maintained their position, now repelling the fierce attacks of greatly superior force in front, now changing to the right and again to the left, and when the enemy's ranks were broken, charging upon him, capturing his colors and his men. Shot and shell were every moment lessening the number, but the brave fellows were fighting on their native soil. They had come here to stay, and closing the gaps they fought on. When the ammunition began to fail, wounded men carried from the field passed their cartridge boxes to the front. More than one volley that shattered through those rebel lines was supplied from the unexpended powder and ball taken from the person of dead comrades. Towards 3 o'clock, the 1st Brigade moved to the front. The battle was now raging with greater fury than ever, and the 11th was hurried to the railroad embankment a short distance to the left to support Stewart's battery. The enemy was coming from the direction of Chambersburg, was gradually extending his line on the left so as to nearly touch the Emmitsburg pike. For 6 hours, the 1st Corps, numbering in all only 8,000 men, had contended with Hill's corps, a full 30,000 strong. A new danger now threatened them. The 11th Corps, that for some time gallantly held its own, suddenly broke, precipitating Ewell's corps upon our right flank. Neither courage nor valor could avail against such fearful odds. Overwhelmed in front and sorely pressed on either flank, the Union line gave way in defeat and retreat through Gettysburg to Cemetery Hill. Now, for the story of Sallie, and this is what I've heard, when the 11th Pennsylvania found itself on Cemetery Hill, Sallie was not with them. When the rebels retreated on July 4th, some of the survivors of the 11th Pennsylvania came back to this very spot, and Sallie was here guarding the dead of the regiment. And so when they dedicated their monument, they found it only fitting to include Sallie on it. Anyway, this was the story of the regiment, the Pennsylvania 11th Infantry Regiment, by William Henry Locke. Thanks for watching.